Good morning. This is Erin with the Department of Medicaid. It is just now 8:30, so we will give it just a minute longer to clear the waiting room, if that's okay with you, Dale.
It'll be fine. Good morning, Aaron.
Good morning. I did see yourself, Krista, Emily, and Linda log in. Did I miss Renee, or is she not
Uh,
logged in yet?
Emily is also here, and
I got Emily.
oops, see Renee yet.
Okay. That's the only one I didn't see. So I just want to make sure sometimes when people come in large groups, I miss you guys. The waiting room is cleared. So if you would like to begin, I'll hand it over to you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Therapy TAC meeting. The first thing on the agenda would be to review and approve the July 11th, 2023 minutes.
Dale, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay.
I'll second.
Thank you. The first thing is on old business is to follow up from the Department of Medicaid Services regarding the study findings on increasing the PTOT speech fee schedule. And I did speak with Commissioner Lee and yesterday, and she indicated that the UK is still working on the project, and they had a few setbacks, but it's not complete yet. Is there any additional information from Medicaid that they would like to discuss on this matter?
No, this is Angie Parker with Medicaid. I believe you summarized it well. That is the latest status. Thank you.
Thank you. The second item is to follow up on traditional Medicaid requiring physician signatures on plan of care in order to receive a authorization. What's Medicaid's interpretation of in collaboration with? And is Justin on here today?
Justin is not on today. He is out attending another meeting.
Okay. I think he was gonna send a letter out regarding that, but I haven't received it, and
I believe there is a link to a letter, and I can put that in the chat.
that'd be great.
Again, this is Angie Parker with Medicaid.
So is the requirement that the physician's signature needs to be on the plan of care prior to the authorization?
I don't know. I cannot answer that.
Yeah, all the MCOs don't really require that whenever you get an authorization, but and that's a real
The letter states DMS will accept signatures on PTOT-ST documentation for prior authorizations when signed by the referring physician or another physician, APRN, physician assistant, or RN within the same group. Electronic signatures are allowed if in compliance with 907 KAR 3 005. Previously, only the physician who referred the member is allowed to sign documentation for prior authorizations. This has created a burden on therapists and members, causing delays in service. Referring provider is to review documents signed and keep in the member's medical file for auditing purposes. And this letter was dated August 30th, 2023.
Well, that would make it a little bit easier if anyone within that physician's office can sign, a provider, that is, not a front desk person. But, because the sticking point on that is, sometimes the, physician is on vacation, or sometimes you fax those over and you don't get them back for a month or so. Holds up the process. TAC members fine with that?
Dale, it's Pam Marshall. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
One concern I have about that is more the ongoing. So when you have children, especially if they're in the middle of treatment, being able to get that signed plan of care and not disrupt their plan of care is really a challenge. And so that's where we have the challenge of having those plan of cares have to be signed, is more the disruption. Because what's different about our services is they're weekly, bi-weekly, especially if a child is in the middle of more intensive treatment, then to have to stop and get that new prior authorization with the new plan of care submitted. We also have additional challenges. I know we're just talking about this one issue, but I think we do need to talk about the other issues, with that being that in that retro situation. We can save that for when we bring that up.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but don't you feel like it does make it a little bit easier, smoother, that you can get any an APRN or anyone else that's within that practice, physician, APRN to sign that, so you don't have to have the referring physician?
I do think that's easier, but it still comes down to their offices are busy. What I would like to suggest is, has anyone asked the physicians? Has Medicaid gone to the physician group and asked them? Because, what we hear constantly from pediatrician offices is they're burdened with the level of patients that they have, and, the amount of work that they have, that I'd love to hear what they have to say on it, because they're getting, sometimes they're getting one pediatrician maybe getting 50 of these things to sign, if their caseload of children is high, especially if they're a group that is accepting Medicaid, it's going to be even a higher incidence of this. And we're just one provider type. Think about, they've got all kinds of specialists that are seeing some of the kids that we see.
Hey, Dale.
And also, I said, doesn't the CMS regulations also allow for delayed certification? It seems like if the regulations are allowing for delayed certification, then that should also allow us to send the plan of care with signature.
Yeah, I believe that's correct, Linda. Any other comments from the TAC members?
Yeah, Dale, the only concern that I have from a standpoint of the verbiage in that letter is the RN signing that, because the provider is responsible for certifying that plan of care. So I'm kind of in the same mindset as Pam, from a standpoint of not only the delayed process there as far as the regulation with the signature on the plan of care, but also the ongoing attempts at trying to not requires so much burden on our providers who are sending these, individuals, adults, children, even wound care patients to us for our area of expertise to be able to facilitate care and intervention and check in with them within that 90-day period. So I would tend to agree with her on asking our physicians and our other providers for their perspective. And I'm a little concerned about the RN verbiage within this provider letter.
Hey, Dale.
Yeah,
Hey, Dale. Jennifer, my revenue cycle manager, is in here too, and we just had some clarification on some things. Didn't they say like last year, a while ago, like auth submissions, we didn't have to have the signed plan of care in place to get those as long as we had them on file and record, and that there should be a grace period in getting those plan of care signed and attaining off because it can be very difficult. And CMS regulations allows there to be miss certification. So as long as it's proven that they're under the care of a physician, example, dated later than the plan of care that's signed, the guidelines are clear that it says that there can be that grace period there.
so does Gainwell know that? Because if we don't have a plan of care signed by a physician, Gainwell won't accept it.
You can talk, yeah. So I'm gonna let Jennifer talk on this. Hold on.
Yeah, and kind of what I experience is, so a lot of times the way it's running through to get the auth is they're holding the auth period specifically to the POC period dates, the certification dates, 90 days, cannot be outside of that. And so if we're submitting for auth for day one of the POC and that POC is due, we can't get our auth because the physician's never going to sign it that day.
No, that's true.
And the way this CMS guidelines are written, the point behind it is proving that the care is under physician review and care. So they even pretty clearly state in CMS guidelines that one, they allow for delayed certifications. There's just certain documentation you follow with that. And even in periods of, if there's a missed certification, if you can prove you tried to get it signed, and if you have a later signed plans of care, CMS is very clear in instructing contractors to not disallow that would be proof services were provided under physician care.
So does that mean we need some clarification from the state on this?
Yeah, I think we do. Is this something that we should, as a therapy TAC, maybe take to the physician's TAC and get their opinion on this?
I personally think maybe they're not aware of the reg or something, because the reg is there. Exactly, what I was saying and what she was saying is you have certain protocols that you can follow if you have a delayed certification that shows, you had attempted to do that, and them having us do it up front is kind of going against what the regs allow.
Hi, this is Dr. Terrio. I think bringing it to the physician tech might be a good idea, because I agree that I don't think they realize that the reg is there, but also, it's really causing trouble, for our members to get the services they need.
I agree, Dr. Terrio. It's a burden for the physicians and the therapist groups, and also mostly the member.
And I know I've said this before, but when the physician, refers to therapy, I kind of think it's silly to sign those, because I'm not the expert, the therapist is the expert. So I'm never, ever going to like comment or change whatever the plan of care is that the therapist wrote, because I don't have the expertise to do that.
Yeah, that's correct. I have some physicians that refer to me that do want to see the plan of care, just to read it over, but not really be critical of it or making decisions on it. So a lot of them really don't think they need to sign that plan of care.
Yes, I agree. It is educational, but
Yes. So let's as a therapy TAC, let's take this to the physician's TAC and
Dale, this is Erin with Medicaid. I believe the physician's TAC for this month has been canceled, but I can put you in contact with Cody, who handles and facilitates all their agenda items, and see what I can do about getting you into the November meeting. Does that work?
that'd be great. I appreciate that, Erin.
No worries.
Okay, we can go to item 3, a follow-up with referencing the regulation the departments used as a guideline when permitting Evercore to create their own medical necessity criteria. And that is another topic that came up when I spoke to Commissioner Lee yesterday. And the contracts, she tells me the contracts that Medicaid has with the MCOs does allow a provision if Medicaid improves it, if there's something in either Milliman or I forgot the other criteria.
Interqual.
Well, yeah, if there's something in there that doesn't either of those doesn't meet a certain situation, then an MCO can get permission to create something in their criteria. So is there anyone from Medicaid that would like to also comment on that?
The only thing that I would add is that if you're having challenges with the criteria, that they should supply you a copy of what that criteria is. And that's even if they're using Milliman or Interqual. Regardless of the criteria, if you have any questions regarding the criteria, you may request and you should receive a copy of that criteria.
And Dale, this is Pam. I think that was our question. The therapy group's question is, what criteria was not met? Why was that additional process approved? What was the criteria in Milliman or Interqual, which I think most everyone's using Interqual, in specifically for the therapy services? What was not met that allowed this third party, Evercore, to create their own standards? And no one's answered that question.
Yeah, I guess I don't really know who had problems with that. What agency or what practice had an issue with that criteria. So I don't know what that was. Any other TAC members recall who was having problems with that Evercore criteria? But I agree, Angie, that we should, if a person does run up against that, they should have the privilege of reading what the criteria is and finding out why Interqual or Milliman did not meet that criteria. Anything else on that subject? We move on.
Dale, it's Pam again. What is the final result or information that we want, if we can state that clearly? Because it sounds like it's still not resolved. No one's answering the questions that we had.
This is Angie with Medicaid. I understand you're wanting to know what the difference was. I don't know that we have that information other than when it was reviewed, Evacor and the information they provided us was evidence-based. I don't know that we can say, well, this request was for physical therapy, and this is what Intercross said, and this is what Evercore says for this specific thing. I don't know that we can get that to that granularity. All I can say is that it was reviewed by Medicaid, and Medicaid did approve the criteria for them to use. And if you cannot, if you have any questions regarding that criteria, that they should provide you a copy of it.
Right. And I think they provided a copy, but I guess, we're just asking because it would appear that we would have no say in those decisions. Like a decision was made and the providers were barely even notified. I mean, we weren't notified in a timely manner. It was a couple weeks before it was rolled out. So there was no understanding of the reasoning behind this, and where's the accountability with that for, a third party just coming up with criteria, submitting it to Medicaid. I mean, it would be very hard for Medicaid to know, is this right or isn't this right? I mean, I just have that question, is where's the accountability for these
The
third party?
accountability would be for the MCO to provide you adequate timing if there's any difference in criteria. Also, the Medicaid has to approve it before they use it. So if they only gave you 2 weeks, that is an issue, and we can address that with the MCO.
And we'd have to go back and look at the timeline. I don't know if we stated that, Dale, in our original concern.
They have to give you at least 30 days notification of any changes in prior authorizations or guidelines.
Is that true for payment policies as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move to item number 4. Following up on the process of getting a retro PA from traditional Medicaid when a member applies for disability and is assigned from an MCO to traditional Medicaid. That is it's a real problem, becoming a real problem when the MCO wants paybacks for months on end, and then the provider tries to get a PA from Kentucky Medicaid, and the criteria for getting a PA with MCO is different than it is with Kentucky Medicaid, and it's a real concern. What can Kentucky Medicaid do to fix this? I guess that's my question, or our question.
Dale, would it be okay if we explained a little more in depth what the challenge is to the provider?
Sure.
So this is Pam again. One of the challenges are each MCO and Medicaid have different nuances. They all have separate processes and separate medical policies, separate guidelines for how you submit for a PA, what, the criteria that they're looking for. One example is the ICD-10 code or the diagnostic code. There's certain, Kentucky Medicaid wants a certain code in the primary spot, and then the other codes in the secondary and tertiary and so on spot. The MCOs want a different order. There's also other specific nuances. So what happens, because we personally, our own practice has received probably 3 or 4 of these a week. And these are some of the most medically complex kids. So some of them have 2 or 3 services, and some of the retros are greater than 6 months. It might be 9 months. We've had one over a year. So that's a lot of claims, and it's requiring our electronic medical record systems that most of us have that are small practices, not big hospital systems, they don't have a lot of bells and whistles, which means you have to manually go in. And if you go in and manually update something, it's now going to change that date. An example would be a plan of care. If we have to submit a plan of care to Medicaid to get that retro PA, there's specific criteria that that PA department wants to have. That means we have to go in and alter our documentation, which is not preferred. I mean, to go in and have to change the order of the diagnostic code, or to go in and have to change something to meet that criteria. And it's been asked of us from the Medicaid PA department, why don't you use that criteria for everyone? You should just use this for everyone, would be the standard. But they're not understanding that the MCOs all have different standards, and we've got to meet those standards in order to get that prior auth. So my question is, because this is so time consuming, it can take 8 or 10 hours for one child. And then we're having to submit a spreadsheet with all the claims to our Medicaid rep, because you cannot go on Kentucky Medicaid and rebuild these. They've got to override them. And if the MCO skipped or missed, again, there could be 100 claims or more that are being worked for one kid. If there's one that's missed, then they can't process that till the MCO takes it back, and then the MCO has to submit to the state this recoupment. That whole process, can take 30, 60 days. Meanwhile, the money's already been recouped from the small provider. You're out that money during this whole time. But there's a lot of nuances and details to this, and it's just a huge burden to the provider. Like, I'm sure, Renee, your billing and collections team is probably stressed out. Ours is very stressed out dealing with this.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
Jennifer wanted to say something.
Yeah, so I've got a few fine points on this. Number one, our agency just over the last few months is now in excess of $30,000 in recoupments for retro eligibility takebacks. Now, one question I have is, so the MCOs are supposed to be receiving these eligibility records monthly. So with some of these that just started occurring just the last few months are retro eligibility changes from prior to a year ago. So why is this happening? Did these not show up on prior DMS records sent to the MCOs, or are the MCOs just being late in auditing? Could there be a cutoff to that? Number two, there's a huge issue of, okay, we can get the auth, but I cannot get the auth prior to 1 year of data service. So then I'm stuck trying to go through our provider rep, who is slow to respond or just non-responsive, to try to get these paid through the state. So it is creating a huge issue. It is a financial burden. And, for us, especially when as large as we are, when it occurs at this kind of rate, that is a massive amount of money.
And administration burden.
And it's an administrative burden. My team is stuck working these, not current issues. It creates problems for the patients because we're working these, not current issues on accounts that we need to fix. So,
and we've done our due diligence as a provider. We got the authorization. They were approved.
And yeah, there's no way for them, when the way these were occurring, these were retro enrollment changes, so they would never trigger an eligibility failure. They were active at that data service. Now they're not, and they are retroing them back prior to 1 year and taking the money back. So I also have a question, kind of along the lines of, if a Medicaid or MCO finds out there's a third party payer, they typically go straight to that payer and they work that out financially for past paid dates, and they leave the provider out of it. Can the state do something with these retro eligibility changes where they're really working that out with the MCO financially, not the provider, leave the provider out of the equation?
I agree.
So we'd love to hear from the state on this, on what their game plan is to resolve this issue before, at figuring out if we need to take it to legislation.
Well, the only thing that I can offer this morning is to let you know that we are working with Gainwell on this process, and that it affects more than therapy services. Not that that helps any, but that's all I can state this morning. We've recognized the problem, and it's if you want to provide even further issues that you discussed this morning, you can send those to Justin Derringer, specific issues.
I think we're trying to communicate the urgency of this because there's some of us that are receiving 3 or 4 of these a week. We have some now that are 30 days old that we've been asking, for a process. And like Renee said, we're asking specifically, can the exchange happen between Medicaid and the MCO and not involve the provider? If we've gotten a prior authorization, why can't an automatic prior authorization be given to Medicaid, from Medicaid? We have to rebill all the claims. We can't rebill them like we normally do. We have to submit them spreadsheet, claim by claim to the provider rep. It's such a tedious process. We don't understand why there can't be a different, more streamlined process. So we're asking, it's sort of like emergency help, I think Renee and I are saying. It's
Well,
we need help.
I can tell you, so if what the question is getting a if you've gotten a prior authorization already, say with traditional fee for service, and then they go to an MCO or vice versa.
No, it's the other way around. We've gotten it with the MCO, and now Medicaid, during the period that this child is being evaluated for disability, is what straight Medicaid is covering. So they're on an MCO. We've done all of our due diligence with the MCO. We've provided the service, gotten the PA, provided the service, gotten paid. That's all happened. But somewhere during that time, this child was being evaluated, whether they got approved or not. During that period of evaluation, they should have been on straight fee for service Medicaid. So in the retro situation, we're having to submit to Gainwell, for prior authorization. And our question is, why do we even have to submit for prior auth? Why can't they automatically give a retro number that we use? Then we just submit a spreadsheet or something to our Medicaid rep. And I realize the whole recoupment has to happen first. They have to verify, the MCO took all the money back and all of that. But there's got to be an easier process than us having to go change all this documentation to meet Medicaid's guidelines, submit for this new PA. That whole thing is just extremely burdensome.
And I can appreciate that. Like I said, they are working on this. And does that help you today? No. Does that help you in the next month? Probably not.
And I think
it's a matter where the process they're working on getting that prior authorization to traditional Medicaid electronically. So those things do take time.
So has anyone asked the question, can Medicaid not automatically give us a retro auth number for the time period in question?
That not that I'm aware of. I don't know. And I just know as much as I've been able to communicate this morning, because I'm not a healthcare policy. Sorry, is the division that handles the claim issues for traditional fee for service.
So Angie, do you understand what the issue? I mean, do you feel like you have a good understanding of what this issue is? If you were, like we did our job, we saw the patient, we were approved, and
I think I have a better understanding now. Yes.
Yes, and we were paid. And a year later, and some over a year, I've already paid my therapist. The money's gone. because the therapist did her job, right? And now 100% comes back to me that now I've had to pay back to the MCO. And now the state says, we don't know. It could be a month, it could be longer. I've taken out another bank loan over here. That is not fair for us providers who have already been struggling, not seen an increase since we've started our companies. Something has got to change at the Medicaid level, at the state, at Kentucky. And I don't know how we're going to continue to push this. I got an email from a therapy provider closing her doors this week in the state of Kentucky. Patients are losing services, and it's happening fast. And if somebody at the state, every time we get on here, Angie, I know this isn't you, but every time we get on here, it's another, oh, this meeting was canceled. Let's push it back to November. This meeting was canceled. We are at the end of 2023 here with no changes whatsoever. And I know you're not the one that is the reason for this, but you've got somebody at the state has to figure out the solution here soon, or these children are going to go without services. This is like, I don't know. It's the craziest thing in my head that we've done the service a year ago. We did it the right way. We were approved. Now you've taken it back and it's got to go back through the state. I've got to now pay a person. And guess what? A year ago, my hourly rate was a lot cheaper than it is now. So now my biller, who might have been at 15, is now at $21 an hour because of inflation. I've got to repay them a higher hourly salary to get this fixed and send the state another spreadsheet. Yet I'm not getting an increase on this. And I don't know if we're going to get, and maybe somebody knows this, would we get a percentage of fee taken back? Like now, if it's another 30 days, do we get an increase on that? Because you've taken it back and we've had to go borrow money. I don't know the solution here, but it is a big issue.
I think ideally the solution would be to cut the provider out of it. Medicaid should work with the MCO, that financial responsibility, pay back the MCO, whatever that looks like, if possible. And then if not, there's got to be an easier way to submit for these Austin claims.
Good morning. This is Jordan Griffin. I'm branch manager for eligibility and enrollment. And I just want to ensure everyone here that we are very aware of this issue, and it's something we're currently discussing with leadership on how to alleviate a lot of this burden. So I just want to let you know we are very aware of this issue, and we are looking into options to try to alleviate this burden, because we hear it from a lot of providers. That this is an issue. And so at least from the eligibility side, we are taking a look at this right now. As far as the prior authorizations, I don't have an answer with that immediately. But from the eligibility point of view, we are looking at ways to fix this.
I appreciate you saying that. I just want you to know, though, we brought this up 2 months ago. And here now it's another TAC meeting and another unresolved. And meanwhile, we're the ones having to deal with it. You know, we're the ones having to, like Renee said, be without the money, be in this burden. And we're just asking for some kind of, can we at least ask the question, can there be an emergency fix of just automatically give us a PA number so we can go ahead and send a spreadsheet to our Medicaid rep and have them start working those claims? That would at least shorten it, rather than having to submit all the documentation and prove, you know, what Gainwell's having us do is prove medical necessity again, which is ridiculous. We've already done that with the MCO, do you see? And now there's a whole different string of criteria that we're expected to meet to get another prior auth in this retro situation. And like Renee said, they won't even do it if it's past a year. Then we're stuck. So at least ask the question, ask someone, can we not give them a retro authorization number for the time periods that child was being seen? Can we not take the MCO's authorization that was authed from this date to this date for speech and just automatically give a number for that and match it? Just give your own Medicaid number to match it. That's what we're at least something to help us speed this process up.
I hear you, and I'm typing up an email to leadership right now. I'll make sure to include that as an option. And you know, we just have to wait and see. You know, changes like this aren't necessarily an overnight change. It's something that has to go through a process. But I'll definitely bring that up with leadership and see if that's something that would be an option.
That would be the simplest solution, Pam. I agree that, you know, Medicaid, has the MCOs contracted to them, and obviously they respect their, PA process, or, they wouldn't have the MCO contracted to them. And so, yeah, it'd be so much so simple to just, use the authorization that the MCO gave you originally until it expires, and then get a, PA from traditional Medicaid. It's a simple, that's it simple.
That's something that we discussed in our prior conversations. So I'm just circling back in our email thread, and I'm going to bring that up again and see what we can do.
Thank you, Jordan. Appreciate that.
And Angie, when you said they were already working on part of this, which, like what group is working on it and which parts are they working on?
Oh, all of it. What Jordan was talking about. It's a matter of technology as well, as far as giving authorizations back and forth through technology when on any service. And I know that has been in the works as well. That's part of this. But Jordan, it sounds like it's going to bring your suggestion higher up, and maybe we can get something until that other process is in place to get some help for you all in this issue.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The other option is not pay back the money until they get their money.
Okay, well, we can move on to new business, and there's one item on new business, and that's Humana recoupments. And there's been providers that have had money recouped from them for no apparent reason. The company that I work for, it's happened to them. It's been a year since pediatric therapy services has been paid by Humana. We've talked to several different individuals at Humana, and each one of them gave us a different story, and but nothing's been resolved. And after the email that I sent to Commissioner Lee and Deputy Commissioner Cecil and Deputy Commissioner Hoffman last week, I did have someone from Humana reach out, and they basically gave us the names of the people that we've already talked to that got us nowhere with resolving the problem. I think Renee, I think your company had an issue with Humana, and I think you did get it resolved.
Yes. So, and I had to jump through a lot of hoops. It was not easy. So the recoupments that came through from us, we had well over $50,000 recouped, all within like a 2-week time frame. And they were all for claims data service 1 to 2 years prior. And so what I had found out is the recoupment reason was specifically saying provider NPI not on file with DMS. So through research, these recoupment reasons were found to be invalid, and Humana Medicaid owed us back all of this money plus interest, thank goodness. So, but one information that I found out talking to one specific representative of the Humana Medicaid audit department strictly for their dedicated Medicaid department is this is an issue they have providers, not just therapy providers, calling in about daily. It happens all the time, and almost all of the time, this reason is found to be invalid. So when this is an issue, number one, I also don't understand why they're running this type of edit, period. Because they are running this edit on the front end when they process claims through their EDI clearinghouse department. They are running and checking DMS files to verify the provider NPI and taxonomy. Everything is on file. So why, 2 years after the fact, are they running this edit again? And it's found to be invalid. It is a known issue for Humana Medicaid that they have done nothing to resolve. And they are aware that it is almost always found to be an invalid recoupment reason.
So I found out recently, and I don't know if somebody from Medicaid or Humana that's on this call can verify, that Humana Medicaid is experiencing a loss. A lot of the Medicaid MCOs are doing well financially. Can anyone verify that? Is that part of, you know, when an MCO is struggling financially, of course, they're going to look for money to take back. Is that part of this problem?
What I have heard is it wasn't their MCO line of business that was struggling financial. It is their commercial line of business, and it is struggling financially to the point they are completely shutting it down. They're only going to continue forward with Medicare Advantage and Medicaid lines of product. So I don't know that it's strictly coming from their Medicaid department, but Humana is struggling financially to the point they are completely shutting down their commercial line.
Yeah, I was aware of that. I'm talking about specifically Medicaid, the Medicaid MCO.
And I have not heard about the MCO, whether or not they're struggling financially or not.
Hi, this is Samantha Harrison. I'm the operations officer of Humana for the Medicaid plan only. I cannot speak to the commercial line of business. In regards to encounters that may have been rejected, that would be one of the primary reasons that we would do an overpayment recovery if there's a rejection from the state level. There are times where an encounter may be rejected and an update to the master provider list happens, and then we are able to resubmit and it's accepted. Oftentimes we have to take a look at those encounters that are rejected and do an overpayment recovery. If you are struggling or having issues with overpayment recovery for the Medicaid line of business, we request that you reach out to us. Our provider relations team will help dive into that with our claims research and resolution teams as well, working with financial recovery. Happy, Mr. Lynn, to get in touch with you if your concerns are related to Medicaid line of business. We can certainly drive you to the other products and the leadership over other products. I'm specifically over Kentucky Medicaid. Happy to work with anyone who's having challenges as it relates to encounters. From a Medicaid perspective, we'll dig into it, work with you, and make sure you understand the reason behind the overpayment recovery. You also have the opportunity to appeal or dispute an overpayment recovery within the period of time. So we'll also look into that dispute that we may have received to see if there was any concerns with how that was resolved. Happy to work with any of you. Feel free to reach out. You can email Humana, KY Medicaid at humana.com, and we will work with you, drive it to provider relations, claims research and resolution, and we'll set up meetings to resolve for you on a Medicaid standpoint.
Hi, Samantha. My name is Bernard Hamilton. I'm the administrative director here at Fairtree, where Dell Lynn's at. So with what you had said, so we're currently right at $50,000 in overpayment recoveries. I have been working with this hands-on myself personally. I have spoken with people in your grievance and appeals department, in your provider relations department, provider payment integrity. I've spoken with Jesus in Louisville. I have recently spoken with Jeremy. It initially started, and it was the original was that the provider information was missing or incorrect in the original claim. And it was suggested that I go in and dispute every claim that that was there. I did personally go in and dispute 600 claims one by one. And in those, I also put in on every single one of them, the referring provider and their NPI. Once I did that, they were all rejected, and it said that it appears it was previously reviewed by the Kentucky MCD team and determined to be valid. So I called back to provider payment integrity again, spent about 4 hours on the phone, and then it was brought to me that the taxonomy numbers were now not on the claims, and that's why they were being pulled back. And we've never put taxonomy numbers for the referring or ordering provider on any claim for any Medicaid MCO. So I'm curious, is that really the issue that is going on? Again, I mean, to attest, we're a smaller provider, and $50,000 is pretty detrimental to our business for services that were provided, rendered, that we should be paid out for. And a lot of these, like I didn't catch her name, that she was going through as well. I mean, these are 2 years old, 1 year old, and we've not received a payment from Humana for current services in over a year. It's at that point where it's, how do we figure this out, or do we just stop accepting Humana altogether?
And we also have added the taxonomy for the referring physicians on there too, and they're still denied and still being taken back.
Yeah.
Mr. Hamilton, I am very happy to work with you. Unfortunately, I don't see I haven't personally seen your 600 claims that you did a dispute on. What group are you with again?
I'm with Theratree.
Theratree? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
We will, I'll set up a meeting with you if you're willing to do that, so we can work with you. I'm happy to work with anybody on this call and have work groups to identify the reason for overpayment recovery, validate that they're accurate reasons. If we have questions about that, we will certainly incorporate the department. If there is a question about what the code edits have to be in order to get the encounter accepted, is it, in the very beginning in 2020, we didn't have front end edits that would reject back to the provider if it didn't match the master provider list issued by the department. So if they're aged claims that have been recovered within the 24-month allowance by the statute, that could be the reason why we paid it and then recovered it, because the encounter wouldn't get accepted. However, without looking at each and every issue that you guys are having, I'm just making an assumption based on encounter acceptance. We've had a lot of encounter financial recoveries performed in the last year that are based on encounter rejections, where we have to get the money back, submit a void to the department, then submit a change to the department, or work with the provider to have them resubmit a corrected claim without actually taking the dollars back. So I'm happy to work with you, get on a call, and really drive you to solution and provide clarity for each and every claim, overpayment recovery, and get it to resolution.
And that's ultimately what we want to do. I mean, when we started looking into this Humana issue 2 months ago, we were in total close that we're no longer ever going to see payment for. It was at $5,000, and now we're pushing 15 in that total closed. And every day that it takes, it's just getting more and more backdated that we'll never see the money for.
Okay, let me work with you. Happy to set up a meeting.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Can you put your contact information in the chat, Mr. Hamilton? And anybody else, we will have our provider relations representative reach out, set up a meeting. We'll have our claims research and resolution expert on the call, and include our financial recovery experts as necessary. We'll also involve our grievance and appeals if there were actual disputes that were submitted for specific claims. So happy to work with you and anyone else who's having the similar concerns.
Thank you, Samantha.
Thank you. And I'm sorry for the challenges.
Thank you, Samantha. I put my contact information and Bernard's as well in there, and I think Bernard put his phone number in there as well. So if you please reach out to us so we can meet with you on this. Are there any other issues from TAC members or the public?
Yeah, I have a couple of things, Dale.
Thanks.
One of them is the 92609 is not on the Medicaid fee schedule for OTs. That is the AAC code. So a speech device that a child may have that they have to use all the time, that an OT would be using in a therapy session with them as well. And that's a code that is not on the OT fee schedule. And then I also have provider credentialing issues with WellCare and Aetna. So I don't know if there's somebody from WellCare and Aetna on the call that I could just get in touch with. I don't know if anybody else is having any provider enrollment issues. Really, it's like lack of communication, kind of that whole song and dance. So.
Hi, Chris, this is Stuart on with WellCare. I'll put my email. I think you've got it. I think we've emailed before.
I do.
You do?
I do. Yeah. Is there a possibility of a phone call with you? Is that
Sure.
okay? Let me see if I have your phone number because I don't know that I do. No, I don't.
You probably don't.
Okay. Do you mind to put that in the chat, or is that like secret information?
I don't mind.
Okay. If it's secret information, I can put my email in there.
I'm okay. It's not the World Wide Web that I'm putting it on. Well, I guess it will be because this will be posted online. So
well,
the whole world can see it, but that's all right.
Listen, I don't mind to send you my email. Okay. And then if there's somebody from Aetna, is that? I think I usually have. I think Dawn Powell has been maybe on here before. We got nobody.
Sorry, Chris, I'm trying to scroll. Usually the MCOs have a who
Okay.
they're with next to their name. So I'm looking to see if there's any Aetna. Oh, there she is.
Sorry, I'm having trouble coming off mute. Becky Bowman is actually your representative for Aetna, so I will send a message over to her and get in touch with her and have her set up a meeting with you if you would like.
Yes, that would be nice. Is there also a possibility to get a phone number for?
Yes, I'll put that in chat for you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Any other issues from TAC members or public? If not, I don't think we have any recommendations for the MAC, but Erin is going to give us the contact information for the physicians TAC, so we can possibly get on their agenda in November and discuss the physician's signature on plan of cares. So if there's nothing else, we can adjourn, and their next TAC meeting will be Tuesday, November 14th. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good afternoon or morning. It's not afternoon yet. Morning.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thanks, everyone.